Matt Moscona.
I'm very important.
After further review.
Say it one more time.
After further review with Matt Moscona.
And here we go.
Live from the Raising Cane studio.
Let's ride!
Off and running, welcome in. After further review here on a Friday, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar. Musso in for Moscona. He'll be back on Monday. We got Taylor Sharp and Paul O'Neill along for the ride, and we're glad to have you along for the ride here today as well. I mean, we got a jam-packed show to get through. A lot from the NFL Combine, some Saints news as well, dealing with the current roster. The NFL salary cap is now officially set. We know the number. Where does that leave the New Orleans Saints? And, of course, LSU baseball, they open up a 4-game weekend at the Box tonight, 6:30 first pitch, so about 3.5 hours away. They'll face Dartmouth at the Box tonight. They'll face Northeastern on Saturday, and then again on Monday with another game against Dartmouth in between. So we got plenty to talk about there as well. We'll go ahead and begin as we do every single day.
It's time to pop the top on another edition of AFR with Bud Light. Drink easy.
And we'll start with LSU baseball out at the Box. Actually, we'll start with an update from the game that's going on currently, and that is Northeastern taking on Grambling. They are in the middle of the 6th inning. Northeastern holds a 2-1 lead. The Huskies are looking for their first win of the season. They scored 2 in the first, left the bases loaded in the second, and have not scored since. Grambling just added a run in the top half of the 6th. So I'll keep you updated just periodically, see if Northeastern can get their first win of the season before they face LSU on Saturday. When I look at this weekend as a whole, and I can give you some notes on each team, and there are some interesting things dealing with Dartmouth, dealing with Northeastern. But first and foremost, this is a weekend that is about LSU. You hear that all the time in every sport you've ever watched. This game's about us. This weekend is about LSU. You suffered your first loss on Tuesday night. We don't need to get into the grand scheme of things, what that means for this team going forward, because in reality, it doesn't really mean anything as long as you continue to take care of your business, like many feel this LSU team will. But it's an opportunity this weekend for LSU to carry over the response they had late in that game Tuesday night, where they climbed back into it and were a couple feet away from Seth Dardar walking it off with a 3-run homer. Carry that over into this weekend against two teams that are struggling. You know, Jay Johnson has been fond of telling this story ever since LSU, I guess really kind of midway through the season a year ago, and he's told it after they won the national championship. He's told it all throughout the offseason of Dylan Cruz being back at LSU and watching practice leading into the 2025 season, and him telling Jay, well, you know, you'll know what type of team you have when you lose the first one. LSU would drop the game to Omaha as part of a doubleheader. They came back that night and run-ruled Omaha and ended up winning that weekend, and they didn't lose again until they went to Texas the second week of conference play. It's similar here. You've lost one. I think you liked the response in the immediacy in that game, but now you get a much bigger opportunity to go respond on your home field, have some bounce-back performances from some guys on the mound who pitched early in that game against McNeese that weren't very successful. You get another weekend for your starting rotation to build off of the success they did have a week ago in Jacksonville, and it comes at the expense of two teams that you are just flat out better than. I hate using the term get right in baseball because it's baseball and wacky, crazy, unpredictable things happen in this game on a nightly and daily basis. But if there ever was that opportunity, this seems like that weekend for LSU. When you look at Dartmouth, who LSU will face tonight, it's a veteran club who have played a lot of baseball and a lot of baseball together. That in and of itself makes them dangerous. You get experienced players out there, crazy things can happen. They're not going to fold, you wouldn't expect. But while they have all that experience back, they're back from a team a year ago that wasn't very good. They won 11 games a season ago and missed the Ivy League tournament altogether. They're projected near the bottom of that league again. Their whole deal is they have to improve on the performance from a year ago. And they've done that in certain areas. They're off to a better start at the plate. It's hard to get a feel on them. You might not know, but the Ivy League starts their season a week later. So last week was Dartmouth's first action. They went 1-2 and had a game canceled in there as well. So they didn't even get to play their full allotment of 4 games in their first week. They're still trying to figure some pieces out, but they showed some nice stuff on offense. They like to run the bases. They'll steal on you here and there. They banged out 7 doubles in those 3 games, so they have that going for them. But overall, it's a team in Dartmouth that comes in hitting .262. On the mound, they have an ERA over 6. So you'll go into it as a heavy favorite. And like I said, the thing for me with Case and Evans tonight, match what you did a week ago. Get me 5 innings. He's thrown 75, 80 some odd pitches over the course of his first 2 outings. See if we can get that to 90. And in that case, can you get me through 6? If you're looking at Case and Evans and just that progression for him moving into that weekend starter role. The other thing is we need to eliminate that big inning if you're Case and Evans. He's had them 1 in each of his first 2 outings. Now, the one against Milwaukee was a little bit more his doing. The one against Indiana was just wacky where one ball left the infield. In that inning, there was an error that cost you the lead in that inning. The response from him was much better coming out in the 4th and the 5th and getting back to what you saw from him the first 2 innings, which was just dominant, sit him down 1, 2, 3 in order. And he was able to extend at that point, and that was encouraging. Now, match the 5 innings, extend if you can, and let's limit that big inning and see if he can't turn in a dominant outing for LSU from start to finish. One thing I think that's going to help lead to that efficiency is better command of the secondary stuff throughout the outing. When he got into trouble in that 3rd inning against Indiana, that's what left him. He needs that changeup. That's his best secondary offering. And you even saw him land the slider and the curveball more consistently the last time out. Build off of that. When you look at Northeastern and what LSU is facing there, this is a team in the Huskies that is coming off the best season in their program's history. Okay, they won 49 games a year ago, carried a 27-game winning streak into the NCAA tournament, had a pitching staff that led the nation in ERA. They won their first ever NCAA tournament game. The bad news is for Northeastern, this is not that team. Of that pitching staff that led the nation in ERA a year ago, they lose 90% of their innings. 90% of their innings. Including all 3 weekend starters. They don't have a pitcher except for one. They have one pitcher that returns 10 or more innings from a season ago. And they have gone through major growing pains because of that. And that has really led them to this 0-5 start. Their offense has not been great either. But they do return an All-American in Harrison Feinberg, who had 18 homers a year ago, almost 70 RBIs, and hit like 355. So that's a guy you definitely have to keep an eye on in their lineup. And while they don't return a lot on the mound, and we'll get into starters and who LSU might see a little bit later on in the show, they do return a lot in their lineup, which is why it's surprising to see them off to such a slow start. I mean, talked about it right at the top of the show. They have 2 runs on the board in the 6th inning against Grambling. I will say Northeastern has really tested themselves. Of their 5 games that actually count, the game against the Boston Red Sox doesn't count. Of the 5 games that count, 4 of them have been against Power 4 competition, and they have not fared well in those. They're testing themselves again by facing LSU, another Power 4 team. So what I say is, with Northeastern, this is a team that they will come together throughout the season, and I could see them winning a lot of games in their conference and maybe having another chance to make it into the NCAA tournament. They were projected by Baseball America, by D1 Baseball, as a regional team preseason. So while it's not off to a great start from them, that could be end up being a really solid, not a great, not an elite, not a resume-changing win for LSU, but it could end up being a solid win because this is a team with a lot of talent where you're going to see good stuff on the mound that they could turn in a nice performance in their league. But overall, this is a team who came in to this weekend with an ERA of 15. That's gone down a little bit because they've held Grambling to 1 run and a batting average of .215. They're going through it. Like I said, it's baseball, crazy, wacky, unpredictable things happen. I hate using the term get right weekend, but LSU should be able to overmatch both of these teams. We'll talk a little bit more about the series as we go throughout the show. Hopefully get you a look at the lineup if it's posted before we get out of here again for a 6:30 pitch. Should have that at the bottom of the third hour. But we'll obviously, circle back to baseball plenty throughout the show. Glad to have you along. It's After Further Review presented by Don Juan Cigar. We're here on a Friday. Musso in for Moscona. We'll grab a break. We'll come back on the other side. Go to the NFL Combine. Garrett Nussmeier with some pretty interesting comments regarding his injury and time at LSU. We'll let you hear what the former quarterback said next. Talk about his upcoming workout this weekend for NFL scouts up in Indy. That's next on AFR.
After Further Review with Matt Moscona, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar.
Brought to you by Evermore. Drink Evermore, EVAMOR, evermore.com, evermore.com. For elite athletes, for someone who just wants a healthier lifestyle. Maybe you're a parent, you want a healthier option for your children. Evermore is a great option. I would highly encourage you, bottom line, if you're drinking tap water, don't. Bare minimum, filter your tap water. But the best option is Evermore. This is natural artesian water. It's underground aquifers on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, right there in Covington. They dug a well into that aquifer, and it's literally thousands of years in the making. That's why they call it Mother Nature's masterpiece. That's what they're pulling out of the ground. The only filtration is take the sediment from the ground out of the water, and it goes right into the bottle. So it never touches air until you uncap it, take that first delicious sip. Learn more where you can buy it, great retailers or online, EVAMOR, evermore.com.
NFL Combine in full swing up there in Indy. You're actually now into the workout and drills and testing portion of the Combine that everybody, actually can sit down and watch on TV and people love to, get invested in. Cornerbacks, safeties, some tight ends going today. So you'll see Mansour Delane, although he's not running the 40. But he'll be out there today. A.J. Halsey, Bauer Sharp for LSU, those type guys. Quarterbacks and wide receivers get their chance this weekend. And Garrett Nussmeier obviously will be in that number for LSU. He had a media availability at the NFL Combine here today on Friday. And as you might expect, talked about a lot. They asked him about Lane Kiffin, which was great. He gave a great answer there. Endorsed Lane, said he knew him a little bit. Asked him about his time at LSU, but again, as you might imagine, first and foremost is an update on the injury and just, hey, can you give us a little bit more background on what it was and when it was?
Yeah, my injury occurred in fall camp, day 2, practice 2 of fall camp. How much did it affect me? It was, I think it was pretty evident. I really wasn't able to throw the football. I had a stabbing pain in my ab every time I went to go throw the ball, and we weren't able to figure out exactly what it was. It was a frustrating deal, and it wasn't LSU's fault. It wasn't the doctor's fault. They did a great job of taking care of me and the trainers there. It was just a rare deal. It was just a thing that, we really didn't figure out what it was until about 2 months ago. Had about 9 days to prepare for the Senior Bowl and try and get back right for that. And so made a lot of progress over the last month. And so feeling much more like myself, which has been exciting.
So we knew it was early in fall camp. He just tells you right there it was day 2. I mean, the second practice of fall camp, you have that injury, and they start going through the process of trying to figure it out, limiting him, all of those things. I mean, remember there were scrimmages on Saturday where he didn't even throw, or Friday wouldn't throw, go scrimmage on Saturday would. Just managing it all and trying to get it going. And, no one really made a huge deal about it leading up to that first game. And the first game of the season against Clemson was the best game that Garrett Nussmeier played all season for LSU. The ball looked good come out of his hand. I mean, he had that beautiful deep ball to Barry and Brown, which was a touchdown, but the refs said it wasn't. And it looks like, okay, it's going to be it's not really going to be anything there with Nuss. And then you get deeper into the season, and, the game against Ole Miss really stands out, and you could see that there was something there. And he even told you, I couldn't throw the football. I mean, he said, I couldn't really throw the football. There was a sharp pain every time he threw the football. The good news is he did follow up a little bit later on and say that he's 100%, if not close to it. And that's great. And I think you saw that at the Senior Bowl, and that's absolutely massive for Garrett Nussmeier. He ended up being the MVP of that game, scored a rushing touchdown, led 2 out of the 3 touchdown drives in that game, and the ball looked great coming out of his hand. Now this is another opportunity for him to get in front of scouts, to go through all these interviews, to get in front of the media and speak about it. And he's passing those tests with flying colors. Garrett Nussmeier, we've talked about, has been the guy with the most to gain, really, for an LSU player at this combine. Because going into the year, he was projected to be a day 1 pick, first-round pick. And then the season went how it did. I also found it interesting. He talked about some bad habits that he developed from the injury that he needed to correct as well.
Yeah, well, just, for one, not being able to use your core as a quarterback is pretty tough, and so I had created just many different habits, whether it was arm angles or things with my feet and trying to turn around my hips instead of my abs and things like that. So just more of learning how to use my abdomen again as I'm throwing the football.
Throwing on the run, things that he just isn't accustomed to doing, trying to compensate for the injury, play through it. Now having to relearn, he said, how to kind of use his core. It's crazy. And doing that in such a short amount of time. 2 months ago. He said that in the first grade. 2 months ago. He said that at the Senior Bowl, too. That it was 2 months ago leading into January. So you're looking at November, December, really December, January. The Senior Bowl was January 31st. Somewhere in that range where they finally figured it out and got him ready to play. And he's doing all of this on the fly while in the midst of the biggest and most important job interview of his life. It's hard not to root for a guy like Garrett Nussmeier. Hard not to want great success for him at the next level that we all know is possible. He's a 4,000-yard passer when he was healthy and had an offensive line in front of him. He also did give a lot of love to LSU. Did that at the Senior Bowl, did it again at the Combine. It's home. It'll always be home. No regrets of his time there. And that's kind of where I want to go and kind of punctuate this conversation with is Garrett Nussmeier gave his all for LSU. And he's right. This is home for him forever. That's a guy who could have transferred out, didn't. Multiple times, didn't. When he finally got his opportunity, had a great season, threw for 4,000 yards, helped lead an incredible comeback against Ole Miss in 2024. That's what built up all this expectation for this past season. And he could have left after 2024. A team would have drafted him. But he came back. He wanted to win a national championship. And I know everybody, it's a big echo chamber where, man, Nussmeier's talking about this injury and you're finally finding out stuff. And there's just everybody, you blame Brian Kelly and blame Brian Kelly. Garrett Nussmeier told you in that clip, none of this was LSU's fault. The doctors and trainers, they did great bringing him along, getting him ready to play. Garrett Nussmeier wanted to play. He came back to win a national championship. He wasn't going to let an injury stop him from attempting to do that. And it was what we said all throughout the offseason leading into that is if you lost Garrett Nussmeier, the season was done. It was over. You saw that down the back end. When the season was out of reach, that's when he sat back. That's when he said, okay, I got to get healthy. I've got a future to think about. But until then, he was out there playing, and he was your best chance to win. You saw that at the back end of the season, too. Michael Van Buren had moments, absolutely. But the grand scheme of things, the sample size you saw, you cannot tell me with a straight face that you believe that LSU had as good a chance to go in and win that Clemson game week 1 with Michael Van Buren as a starter opposed to a hobbled Garrett Nussmeier. Because, again, that was his best game of the season. He was efficient. He didn't turn the ball over. It looked great coming out of his hands to the point where everybody said, oh, maybe it isn't that big of a deal. But as the season went along, you saw that it was. That's very unfortunate. But everything happens for a reason. If Garrett Nussmeier is able to play through that, Lane Kiffin might not be your head coach right now. I know that's not a popular take amongst many, but I think it was absolutely the right call, and I admire Garrett Nussmeier for playing through it and trying to play through it like all great athletes do. Because he had a goal and he wanted to bring something special to LSU, and he went down swinging. Now he's off to the next part of his career. He is healthy, and it's awesome to see him ascend draft boards right now, and I hope that he continues to do so. I have no doubt Garrett Nussmeier is going to nail the interview portion of the combine. He's always been great in that facet of his game. He's the son of a coach. He understands, what to do. He's going to nail that portion. It's showing them that, yeah, he's back. And you know what? Maybe he doesn't really need to because there's enough great tape out there from Garrett Nussmeier throwing the football. But coming off that injury, I'd expect him to at least pick up a ball and throw combine or pro day. And that's going to be a big deal when he does. Because if that core is fully healthy and he's got the same zip and accuracy on the ball that he showed in 2024, he's going to make some money over the next couple of months before April's draft. I know I'm rooting for him. I'm sure all of you are as well. That's a great Tiger who gave everything he had until he literally could not anymore for this program in an era where no one does that anymore, where everybody leaves. And he did it for 5 years. So kudos to Garrett Nussmeier. Best of luck. Glad to hear he's healthy. Before we get out of the before we hit our break, he did have some thoughts on Lane Kiffin that I mentioned earlier in the segment. Promised to play it. Here was his thoughts on LSU's new head coach.
Yeah, I've known Coach Kiffin for a while. Obviously he worked with my dad at University of Alabama. My dad's last year there, and so I've known who he was, and obviously played against him for a couple years there at Ole Miss, and so I have a lot of respect for Coach Kiffin. He's an unbelievable ball coach. He's a magician with the X's and O's, and as I said before, I think he's great for the state of Louisiana. I think he's great for that locker room, and they're going to do great.
Those last few things he said, great for the state of Louisiana, great for the locker room. That's certainly playing out before your very eyes here early in the offseason for LSU. Lane's been all around town. And, obviously look at the relationships he was able to form with recruits early when he got to LSU, Lamar Brown, Richard Anderson, those guys, and retaining the talent that he was able to do at LSU. The vibes haven't been as high around LSU in a few years. I think from a confidence level in what's coming. So that's a great endorsement from Garrett Nussmeier. And look, he told you, with all his ties, remember Garrett's father coached at Alabama under Nick Saban, was an OC there on championship teams. So there are still connections over there, and got to know Lane that way. So that's awesome. And it's a great endorsement there from Garrett Nussmeier on the future of LSU football from a key member of its past.
Choose to hold out.
Their top
this is
eight
what Adam
out
Schefter,
at the box,
ESPN NFL
Northeastern,
Insider,
who
has to
LSU will
say
see later this
about
week
the
and is leading
ongoing discussions
Grambling
involving the Dallas
3-1.
Cowboys
They added
and George
a
Pickens
third run
regarding
of the game
a
in
long-term
the
deal.
bottom
They
of
obviously
the
would like to
sixth inning.
re-sign him. They have
There's
not
some
had
that
extensive
scared me. I
discussions,
jumped.
to my knowledge,
Actually
so far
jumped.
yet.
There'll be time
They're
to
6
do that
outs
this
away from their
offseason.
first
Clearly,
win
George
of the
Pickens would
season. We'll
prefer
kinda keep you
that he has a
posted,
long-term
on
deal and
that.
not
Again,
the
LSU will see
franchise tag.
Northeastern
There
on,
is a history here between the
Friday.
Dallas
Excuse me, on
Cowboys and the
Saturday at,
agent of George
Saturday
Pickens.
afternoon
It's the
at
same
Fox
agent,
first
David Mulgeta, who represented
that.
Micah Parsons last year.
All right, it's a Friday edition of AFR. Musso in for Moscona. Scone is out today. He and Eric had to take Drew to the doctor for the appointment there.
Because the last time that David Mulgeta and Jerry Jones were negotiating with one of David Mulgeta's clients, it ended with Micah Parsons going to the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys, who got a nice haul in return. So the long-term deal is what's going to be on the table potentially. They have to make sure Jerry Jones is not in that room. Have Stephen Jones
Around the SEC, bringing you the biggest news from the nation's best conference. The Georgia
Bulldogs. Guy named George Pickens playing for
Georgia coordinators Mike Bobo and Glenn
not getting a
Schumann,
long-term deal for Dallas. He may wind up getting that from
comes
somewhere else
from Mark
after
Weisner.
2026.
Now, the franchise tag number for wide receivers, that's about $28 million this year. George Pickens, I would say he's going to go in these negotiations. David Mulgeta
and Glenn Schumann.
Jerry Jones says he doesn't like to talk to the agent, so I don't know how this is going to get done if you don't talk to the agent, George Pickens. But I'm pretty sure Pickens, when you look at what's the top money being made by wide receivers, now Jamar Chase is number one, making $40.25 million per year. Justin Jefferson is second with $35 million per year.
The Ole Miss Rebels.
And now he got paid.
He's going to go into these negotiations.
A little Ole Miss basketball news here. Guard
trying to get anywhere
Elias
between
Hammerbean has been granted an extra year of eligibility by the NCAA.
The Dallas Cowboys are not paying him anywhere between $37 and $40 million. They wouldn't pay that to Michael Parsons.
Year of eligibility this season.
I know they're not going to pay that to George Pickens, but it's not wrong with him to ask for that kind of money.
Right.
After being initially granted that 1 year, has been granted
you're not going to get, and you settle for what you want.
That's
usually how these things work.
Here's the problem, though. With the Dallas Cowboys, even though George Pickens is an integral piece of their offense, especially moving forward, because you can just pose so many different threats to the defense when you have two number one guys on the outside and a tight end, and now your run game, because you got to play two high safety.
Wednesday night.
Defensively, it's going to be better as well, too. That's what we seen last season. But they have so many glaring needs, in my opinion, on the defensive side. Defensive
basketball
line,
announced on Friday a home and home
secondary. I just
series with the
all
Memphis
three levels
Tigers.
on defense.
Memphis will travel
on top
to Austin,
of, can you have the
December
majority
16th,
of your money tied up
2026.
on your
The
roster
matchup in
your
Memphis
quarterback,
is still to be determined.
one wide receiver,
Texas is
and
4-2 all time versus
now the
Memphis.
reason why you
Series
franchise tag him just in case you don't end up keeping him, so you can get compensation for him if you decide to trade him.
In 2004, 2005, 2005, 2006, Texas won.
Here's another economic number that could help George Pickens and maybe help the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, there you have it.
The NFL announced today a record salary cap of $301.2 million per team.
Friday.
That's up from $279.2 million last year. So you want to do the math. That's
today's show.
Over right at $22 million extra that a team is going to have. Now, total player costs are going to be over $370 million per team.
We'll touch on that
over
a little bit
$10
later
billion
on in the show as well.
NFL makes a hell of a lot more money than $10 billion.
More thoughts I want
There's
to
such a
give
thing
on the
called
weekend.
moving things around, moving structures around,
and some of the arms that you might see
reconstructing salaries. We always hear restructuring and involving that. Any team worth their weight in salt knows how to do that. Any good team worth their weight in salt knows how to do that. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, there's a way to finagle and have two guys making that kind of price, especially when you got a quarterback back there, one of the highest paid players in the National Football League. And we saw what that looked like offensively with the Dallas Cowboys with George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, and an offensive line that kept getting a little better week by week, and their ability to run the football, Brian Schottenheimer calling the play.
Really
frustrations have detailed. You can do it a different way and have that kind to make sure your quarterback and your offense will be what we saw last year from Dallas.
So here's the funny thing about that, Freddie. I was looking at some numbers earlier, and I should have screenshotted it, but I was looking at $301 million being the salary cap for 2026 in the National Football League, and I thought about, okay, 2008. Let me scroll down and see what it was in 2008. I don't remember the exact number, but I believe it was like it was 100 and anywhere between 110 and 118. I believe.
Coming here on
think about that. 2008 to 2026. That is a drastic change.
The NFL set the salary cap
in the salary cap when you talk about each one of these teams being able to have all this.
After further review with Matt Moscona, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar.
Love telling you about Arco Power Systems, ARCCO, arco.com, arco.com. That's Arco Power Systems. We talk about generators a lot in Louisiana, especially all along the Gulf Coast, where we're sort of in this storm belt right here in the Gulf Coast. Well, of course, a lot of people have home standby generators. When we talk about Arco Power Systems, these are not home standby generators. This is industrial generator power. This is for your business. I mean, just think about it. When the power goes out, be it a hurricane, an ice storm, snow like we had last year, power goes out. What do you do with your business? Well, being offline is not an option. That's why you need Arco Power Systems. ARCCO, arco.com, arco.com, arco.com. Just look at all the locations. Baton Rouge, Bossier, Harvey, Lake Charles, Mandeville, Mobile, LaPorte, Texas, San Antonio, Little Rock, Houston, Dallas. They're everywhere. So if you're a business and you need standby power for your business, you need Arco Power Systems. ARCCO, arco.com, arco.com, arco.com.
I'm proud of the New Orleans Saints. I'm proud of the Saints. I'm proud of their front office for finally taking steps to improve the salary cap. And it's about to pay off really, really big for this team. When they made all 9 draft picks, when they traded, when they worked their roster, made some trades, released all that to Derek Carr retiring, all of those things that helped get them more into salary cap compliance for this season and in beyond, you're about to see that pay massive, massive dividends. So I'm proud of them. It was something they probably should have done a long, long time ago, really after Drew Brees retired. You kind of floundered there for a couple of years, still convincing yourself that you could win immediately, and you couldn't. But they finally did it. And you're going to see it pay off this offseason. The NFL today announced and set the new salary cap in the league for the 2026 season. It is an increase of $22 million. Salary cap for 2026 will be $301.2 million. Now, that leaves the Saints $10.6 million over the cap. But the New Orleans Saints being $10.6 million over the cap is like the New Orleans Saints being $35 million under the cap to start the offseason. With what they have finagled and maneuvered their way through, that is easy. They can get that done probably in 2 moves if they wanted to and clear the $10.6 million and just have nothing but money to spend after that. Ross Jackson has a nice piece over at LouisianaSports.net right now. You should go read it. It's free. You should read all of Ross's stuff. He does a great job, and it's always free. And he looks at a couple moves that the Saints could make here this offseason to free those up. One of them is a restructure to Chase Young's contract, and then, of course, tight end Juwan Johnson as well. Just in those 2 deals, you look at $6 million in clearance. And then you add in reworking Alvin Kamara, potentially a restructure to Cesar Ruiz, who knows what his future in New Orleans is anyway, and edge Carl Granderson. And right there, the Saints already have $20 million free and ready to go. Like, this has got to feel like a brave new world for the New Orleans Saints front office. You always heard, there's no such thing as cap hell, because they always got out of it and were able to put a team on the field. And for a long time, a team that competed at the highest level in the NFL. But you really saw them be hampered the last few years. I'm going to tell you what. I continue to just be nothing but impressed with the contract they gave Chase Young. They got him for a bargain, and he just turned in a 10-sack season, and you're expecting a huge jump for him. And he'll get his money. But now you can also get savings out of it with the cap and reworking it and restructuring it. They continue to look like they have hit a home run with that free agent signing. But it's important that they have these funds to spend, because, yes, you want to get numbers around and weapons and numbers around Tyler Shuck and build that up. And you can do that in free agency. You can do that in the draft. And I'll be very curious to see how they really approach that. I think you're certainly going to see some of it in the draft. But where you could really use the money in free agency is guard. I mean, there's a world where the New Orleans Saints get 2 starting guards. Again, what becomes of Cesar Ruiz? He has not been good. He's one of the worst guards in the NFL. Even with him there, you had struggles at the other guard position with Dylan Radins. So, I mean, we've talked about plenty of guys like Ed Ingram, like David Edwards. We talked about Wyatt Teller earlier this week on the show as well. There are plenty of options for the Saints. And if you're going to pay a guy in free agency on the lines of scrimmage, that's not cheap. Not saying you have to give the highest and top dollar, but it's still not cheap. So with a $22 million increase, and again, only $10.6 million over the cap, they got to think it's like Christmas morning. You got younger in the draft. You made all 9 picks. You got 7, 8 more picks coming up this year. You need to make all of them. Just keep getting younger. And you saw a lot of that young talent succeed for the New Orleans Saints a year ago. But, I mean, this is the best salary cap situation they've had in years. And it's only going to be better next offseason when hopefully they won't be over the cap at all. And then the cap will increase again next season. By how much we'll see. I don't know if it's going to be $22 million. Although, man, if you look at where the cap has gone the previous few seasons, you could be looking at another huge jump. Taylor, we did that exercise. I think the last time I was in for Matt and you were producing, I had you guess the salary cap, like from, man, like I think maybe we went far as back as 2014, right? And just to see how much it's increased and, a little bit over, a little bit over a decade there. I mean, you look at this from 2020. I mean, it's a pretty standard increase, what you've seen. 22 to 2022, it was $208 million. It went up to 224 in 23. From 224, it went up to 255 in 2024. From 24, it went up to 279 in 2025, and obviously to 301 here. So, yeah, you could be looking at another sizable gain. And then might even be under the cap potentially to start.
Was that $25-30 million a year? It's jump. I mean, that's an extra player, Moose.
That's what you're looking at. I mean, you go back to 2015 or 2016, just 2016. So and even at 10 years, a decade. 2016, the salary cap in the NFL was $155.27 million. And now you're at $301.2 in 10 years.
It's essentially doubled.
Yes. I mean, the league is doing fantastic. They'll continue with great revenue that we know of, and they'll just, I mean, that it'll continue to go up. It will. The only year you didn't see an increase was 2010. Since 1994. The only year, 2010. Exciting times around the Saints and what they have to build around Kellen Moore, who's a great young head coach, we all feel, and Tyler Shuck, who everyone is looking to end up being the franchise quarterback. They're in a really good spot. All right, we're going to grab a break, but first, a word from Matt.
AFR is brought to you by Parish Restoration. Kill mold, remove odor, other harmful pathogens, commercial or residential. As a matter of fact, Parish Restoration, I love the process, by the way. If you go to the website at parishrestoration.com, you can see videos of their patented non-toxic dry fog treatment. So you see exactly what it looks like. Very cool. But they have fogged, over at Parish Restoration, they fogged one of the largest buildings in the entire state of Louisiana. So it doesn't matter if it's your office building, your church, whatever it may be, school, or your home. They can even fog your car. Maybe your car has a weird odor, musty smell. Maybe you bought a used car from a smoker and you can't get that smoky smell out. This will do it. They'll come while you're at work, fog it. By the time you're done with work for the day, boom, you're back in a clean-smelling, fresh-smelling vehicle. It's Parish Restoration. Learn more at parishrestoration.com. Parishrestoration.com. Do business with someone you know. Parishrestoration.com.
All right. Up against the top of the hour here. Sports Center is next. It'll get you caught up on national headlines when we return for hour 2. The Saints have 2 months to make a very important decision with their roster regarding a former first-round pick. We'll tell you about that next here on AFR.